186th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is threats to international peace and security. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Mr. Miroslav Jenča, Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia and Americas, Departments of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and Peace Operations, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Miroslav Jenča.
Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, President.
Mr. President, nearly 3 years have passed since the destruction of the Nord Stream gas pipelines in September 2022. This incident has increased concerns about the safety and security of critical civilian infrastructure at a time of heightened tensions in the region. It also sparked speculation over the past years. This briefing, similarly to our previous briefings on this topic, is based solely on information that is publicly available and shared by the member states concerned on the matter. The United Nations does not have any additional details of the events and is not in a position to verify or confirm claims or reports made regarding the incident. To recap the events, between 26 and 29 September 2022, 4 leaks were reported in the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines. These pipelines are located in international waters within the Swedish and Danish economic zones in the Baltic Sea. The pipelines were not in operation at the time, but they reportedly contained several hundred million cubic meters of natural gas. According to a study coordinated by the United Nations Environment Programme that was published in January this year, the incident resulted in the planet's largest human-caused release of methane. Nearly 70 scientists from 30 research organizations participated in the study. They concluded that the plausible range of the Nord Stream leak was anywhere from 445,000 to 485,000 tons, more than twice as much as previously thought. According to the experts, over the short term, the Nord Stream leak contributed as much to global warming as would have 8 million cars driven for a year. Although the incident only represents a small part of global methane emissions, it is an important reminder of the environmental impact on global warming caused by the destruction of critical infrastructure. Mr. President, after the leaks were reported, the Danish, German and Swedish authorities announced the launch of separate national investigations. The authorities have provided updates to the UN Security Council on these investigations. Since we last briefed the Council on this topic on 24 April 2024, further communications have been received. In a letter dated 16 August 2024, addressed to the Secretary General and the President of the Security Council, S/2024/619, the Chargé d'Affaires of the Permanent Mission of the Russian Federation drew attention to media coverage of the Nord Stream incidents and investigation process. On 9 September 2024, a joint letter from the permanent representatives of Denmark, Germany, and Sweden to the President of the Security Council, S/2024-665, informed that the Office of the Federal Prosecutor in Germany continues to conduct criminal investigations into the sabotage against the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. In a letter from the permanent representative of the Russian Federation, dated 10 October 2024, addressed to the Secretary General and the President of the Security Council, S/2024-727, the Russian Federation reiterated its concerns about the ongoing German investigation and reiterated that they see a need for an international investigation into the Nord Stream incidents. Most recently, a joint letter from the permanent representatives of Denmark, Germany, and Sweden to the President of the Security Council, dated 22 August 2025, transmitted further information and updates regarding the investigation conducted by the German authorities. According to this communication, the Federal Republic Prosecutor General of Germany, and I quote, continues to conduct criminal investigations on the sabotage against the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. It notes that these investigations are conducted impartially, independently, and in line with fundamental principles of the rule of law. They are ongoing. The information provided further notes that as part of this investigation, the Federal Public Prosecutor General of Germany has announced that the Ukrainian national was arrested in Italy on 21st August 2025 based on a European arrest warrant requested by the German authorities. The United Nations is not in a position to comment on the ongoing investigations or legal proceedings. Mr. President, as we stated in our previous briefings on this topic, any intentional damage to critical civilian infrastructure is of serious concern. Such incidents should be condemned and investigated. The protection of civilian infrastructure and security of international waters is critical for regional commerce, security, and stability. We continue to encourage member states to further cooperate on these matters and to share information with each other. In the current volatile security environment, we also urge not to politicize or speculate about any findings or developments related to ongoing investigation efforts. Instead, cooperation, trust, and dialogue among all concerned is of utmost importance. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Jenča for his briefing. I will now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, President. We'd like to thank Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Miroslav Jenča, for his briefing. Unfortunately, it has not been properly updated. You did not mention the fact that today we circulated our letter regarding the assessments in the letter, that you did mention the German letter, as well as issues stemming from the German investigation. I think to get the full picture, that must also be taken into account. Colleagues, 1 month from now, on the 26th of September, 3 years would have passed since, in the international waters of the Baltic Sea, in the exclusive economic zone of Denmark and Sweden, 2 branches of the Nord Stream pipeline were blown up. Since the very beginning, it was clear-cut for the international community that what we have in our hands is an unprecedented, deliberate destruction of an object of cross-border undersea civilian infrastructure, which resulted in direct risks for the region's environment and navigation in the Baltic. This irresponsible act drew the attention of the entire world, states, the media, civil society. Given that this terrorist act dealt a serious blow to the interests of a whole host of countries, it was beyond doubt that we needed a meticulous investigation of what happened, an identification of the perpetrators, and to ensure that such crimes would not be repeated. Against this backdrop, we, together with many other colleagues, were within our rights to expect from Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, which launched their national investigations, requisite efforts and cooperation with all parties involved. Yet, despite these well-founded expectations and countless appeals to do the above, these states chose a different path. They decided to keep the international community out of the loop, on rare occasions giving the media snippets of information, non-specific information that not only doesn't allow us to form the full picture of what happened, but even to understand how the investigations are unfolding and roughly who the suspects are. All of this done on the pretext of needing to ensure the confidentiality of the investigation. This was rather bizarre, because the suspects weren't hiding. They were actually boasting about their involvement in the terrorist act. Plus, all three states refused to cooperate on the investigation of the terrorist act, to cooperate with either the Russian Federation nor as part of international efforts. In parallel, and this actually only heightened suspicions about the fact that a serious investigation was not within their plans, Western allies of the three aforementioned states, including those on the Council, repeated the same ideas as if they were a mantra. They said that they placed their trust fully in the investigations being conducted by Berlin, Copenhagen, and Stockholm, which are, and this is their term, effective. It's unclear how they could judge as to whether they were effective, if all we found out during the investigations suggested the contrary. Meanwhile, they hysterically criticized initiatives put forward by Russia and many other countries, including Security Council members, initiatives aimed at an international investigation being conducted under UN auspices, which, and this is our firm conviction, would complement and coordinate national efforts. It would have done nothing to undermine them. As a result, precious time was lost. The Danish and Swedish investigators' work ended just as we had predicted. They took almost 18 months to, and here I'm not exaggerating, to come to just one conclusion. The Nord Stream pipeline was indeed blown up. By whom, how this was done, they could not determine. It's as if, after a murder investigation, the investigators, after 18 months of work, would have concluded solely that the victim had been killed. It sounds laughable, but despite the absurdity of the situation, all of our Western colleagues continue to commend the work undertaken by Stockholm and Copenhagen. As for German investigators, which formally continued their work, were clearly instructed to delay the process in any way possible. After all, as soon as their work is completed, the Western camp will have no arguments that are at all convincing against an international investigation. Thus, it took almost 3 years for Berlin to announce a new development in the case. As Mr. Jentscher already said, according to a press release by the Federal Prosecutor of Germany, between the 20th and the 21st of August in the Italian province of Rimini, on the basis of a European arrest order issued by the Federal Court of Germany, a Ukrainian national, Sergei K., was detained. He's accused of being part of a group which supposedly directly executed the pipeline explosions. That's where the novelty and the specifics end. Yet the official communications from the Berlin authorities were picked up on and widely disseminated by German and international media. Spiegel continued to promote a version according to which there were Ukrainians involved in the terrorist act, elevating this to an incontrovertible fact. ARD, the TV channel, and Süddeutsche Zeitung, as well as Zeit, citing the arrest order within their possession, named a detained leader of a so-called diversionary group, which in September of 2022 placed these time-delayed explosive devices under the two branches of the pipeline. The aforementioned Sergei K. supposedly steered the sailing ship Andromeda, which transported the purported terrorists, but did not actually dive himself. On the 22nd of September, this man, if we are to believe the German authorities, as we don't have any other sources, disembarked and went on his merry way to Ukraine. He denies his guilt and says that he has an alibi. He says that during the events in question, he was in Ukraine. Distinguished colleagues, any impartial expert, given the above, would come to one and only one conclusion. The German authorities, by giving these revelations, are inching us towards that very same version of events which was actively disseminated by Western media starting 2 years ago. A little over 2 years ago. According to this version, the terrorist act was conducted by an autonomous group of Ukrainian amateur divers on the yacht Andromeda. According to various versions, these yachtsmen were acting almost independently, or perhaps they were acting on the orders of the former head of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Valery Zelensky, who supposedly disobeyed an order from his direct superior, Vladimir Zelensky. In other words, not a single state, not a single leader was involved or guilty of the terrorist act. Colleagues, our country has on many occasions demonstrated here at the Security Council the fact that such concoctions are implausible and do not hold water. Experts which briefed us at previous meetings regarding this terrorist act gave similar assessments, according to which conducting such a large-scale, complex operation without state support nor state cover was simply impossible for amateurs to pull off. This is only something that a small group of countries can do, countries which have the requisite military and technical capabilities. Judge for yourselves. We're being asked to believe that in the middle of the Baltic Sea, in an area where there's a great deal of navigation and a significant military presence, including NATO vessels presence, a group of semi-professional divers went unnoticed, reached the island of Bornholm, descended to a depth of 70 to 80 meters, and installed in these murky waters explosive devices on both branches of the pipeline, which is protected from environmental and man-made disasters using cutting-edge technologies. This is the plot of a spy thriller. Despite this version being completely incongruous, it does have one big advantage for the West, those in the West who applauded the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline and were proud to be linked to those who committed these acts. It shifts the attention and places the spotlight squarely on scapegoats who were perhaps involved but were not acting alone. This is basically all the German investigators had to say. This version of events began to be disseminated in the Western discourse roughly 2.5 years ago, immediately after the famous U.S. journalist, the Pulitzer Prize winner Seymour Hersh, published his investigation in which he gave a great deal of evidence and much rationale which pointed to the direct involvement to the organization and execution of the crime by the administration of the former U.S. President Joe Biden. This is when the Russian Federation and many other states, including our colleagues here on the Security Council, unequivocally called for the need to conduct an international investigation into what happened in the Baltic Sea. We shared with the Council on many occasions our observations regarding the fact that promoting such a narrative, this promotion process bears the hallmarks of a coordinated media campaign. Leaks about arrangements between the Biden administration and the ex-German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, agreements about the fact that the US and German secret services tried to come up with an alternative version of events which would divert international community's attention from all of the evidence which was pointing to the involvement of the US and their NATO allies. Everyone who is following this topic, all of the experts agree that the competent German authorities clearly do have much more information about what happened, much more than the information that they have been giving to the media in small doses. Without a doubt, they also have information about the real persons who commissioned and organized the crimes. However, they don't want to publish it or cannot publish it because of the reputational price that NATO and the former US administration would have to pay. In Germany itself, there's a growing understanding of the fact that the terrorist act was directed against German economic and political interests. This is why Berlin is compelled to use these unconvincing reservations about the confidentiality of the investigation and to hide important facts and evidence from their own citizens and the international community. President, the fact that we don't place any trust in Berlin's concoctions also is underpinned by objective reasons. Security Council members know full well that Germany, Denmark, and Sweden refused Russia's proposal, and Russia is a state that is directly affected by the terrorist act, Russia's initiative being to cooperate so as to figure out what actually happened. Competent authorities of the Russian Federation asked for mutual legal assistance and the establishment of investigative groups. However, these proposals were refused without any grounds. We were simply sidelined, unable to participate in the investigation. On top of that, Germany continues to flagrantly violate other international obligations, specifically those related to the International Convention on Combating Terrorist Bombings and the International Convention on Combating the Financing of Terrorism. President, at the end of the day, 3 years on after the terrorist act committed in the Baltic Sea, we have the following. 2 key states in the economic zone of which the act was committed completed their investigation, and the investigations came to nothing. The third state is throwing its weight behind a version according to which there was a major incident involving an attack against transboundary energy infrastructure, supplying Europeans with energy at reasonable prices. Well, they're calling it a technical crime committed by a group of basically unprofessionals, non-professionals. And this sidelines the question of principal importance: who actually commissioned and covered for those who executed this terrorist act. We'd like to think that if the Danish, Swedish, and German investigators investigated any other issue of import for Western elites, the public, including the European public, would accuse them of being unprofessional, and they would be right to do so. But here at the Security Council, we see the exact opposite, a surrealist picture. Western colleagues are saying the investigations are effective, and the only goal they're actually pursuing is to brush this issue under the carpet to avoid the truth being known. Such an approach, espoused by Western delegations, is not only yet another manifestation of double standards. That wouldn't surprise us. It's much worse. In fact, their resistance, their reluctance to conduct an international investigation, and their promotion of a version involving amateur divers is forcing the Council to continue losing time, not taking any measures to thwart real threats to international peace and security, meaning that we could have further destructive actions against transboundary undersea energy infrastructure. Just think about it. The signal this sends, the Council's inaction, that is, to terrorist organizations who not only have now clear-cut instructions on how to organize such an explosion, but terrorist organizations are also seeing that the international community will not actually mount a response to such action, and those commissioning these crimes will not be held to account. If we don't make progress on the Nord Stream issue here at the Council, we could have a repeat of such an incident in other regions, and the responsibility for this will fall squarely on Council members. We call on reasonable Council members to think about this long and hard, and for the German authorities not to try and cover up the truth, but to demonstrate genuine cooperation and to provide the information in full, all of the information in their possession. We're also counting on the German delegation to participate in Council meetings on this topic, instead of using pro forma excuses. We would like to have them tell us how the investigation is proceeding. Now, if we need to maintain confidentiality, such discussions can also be held behind closed doors. The main thing is for the Council to have the full picture, so it can take decisions on the basis of that full picture. The Russian Federation has put forward proposals together with like-minded states, and those proposals remain on the table. We call on all colleagues to support them for the Security Council to be able to discharge its key duty, that is maintaining international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Assistant Secretary General Yencha, for your briefing. The United States recognizes the seriousness of the September 2022 sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines, and we reiterate our concern regarding that event, which we have expressed numerous times. We again reject efforts to politicize this issue, to prejudge the outcome of the ongoing judicial process, and to use the Nord Stream sabotage as a basis for leveling hyperbolic accusations and escalatory rhetoric. Let's not focus the time and attention of this Council on an incident that took place nearly 3 years ago, but rather on ending the war in Ukraine. Colleagues, there is no benefit to repeating our many discussions on this issue, and the United States expresses full confidence in the independent judicial process in Germany. The arrest of a suspect is a step in that process, which is still ongoing. It is not a development that requires this Council's attention. President Trump is focused on one goal: bringing about a negotiated and durable peace in Ukraine to end the human suffering. We call on Russia to focus on that goal as well. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Mr. President, at the outset, I would like to thank the Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Miroslav Yencha, for his valuable briefing. Almost 3 years have passed since the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines were targeted. These pipelines link Russia and Germany through the Baltic Sea. During this period, national investigations carried out by the competent authorities in Sweden and Denmark concluded that the explosions that targeted these pipelines and the resulting damages were the result of a deliberate sabotage. Furthermore, on the 21st of August of this year, the German public prosecutor announced that a Ukrainian citizen was arrested as part of the national investigations into these attacks. In light of these developments today, I would like to reaffirm the following points. First, this deliberate attack on Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines continue to be a cause of grave concern for Algeria. The destruction of critical energy infrastructure is unacceptable under any circumstance. Algeria is linked to Europe through 3 gas pipelines. Therefore, we believe that the critical energy infrastructure, the safety and security of the critical energy infrastructure is essential. Such attacks could have grave repercussions that threaten international peace and security. Second, Algeria took note of the information provided by Sweden, Denmark, and Germany to the Security Council on the latest findings regarding these attacks. In this regard, Algeria praises the competent authorities in Germany for their efforts as part of the ongoing investigations. We will continue to fully support this endeavor that aims to shed light on these attacks. However, it is necessary to fully determine the facts surrounding these events and to hold the perpetrators and those supporting them accountable. Third, it is clear that the strategic importance of this type of critical transnational energy infrastructure means that they are subjected to an increasing and diverse types of threats, and this raises deep security concerns. Therefore, it is necessary to strengthen regional and international cooperation to guarantee the protection of these critical infrastructure and to raise the readiness of countries to confront any resulting damages and to strengthen their ability to carry out the necessary investigations. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement. I can now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Mr. President, I thank Assistant Secretary General Miroslav Yencha for his briefing. The Security Council bears the solemn responsibility to address all dimensions of threats to international peace and security, including those arising from the deliberate destruction of critical civilian infrastructure. The sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipelines represents such a case and is unequivocally contrary to international law. Sierra Leone therefore reiterates its call for the protection of civilian infrastructure in accordance with the fundamental principles of international law. We recall in this regard Security Council Resolution 2573, which condemns the destruction of civilian infrastructure indispensable to the survival of the civilian population, and Resolution 2341, which highlights the need to protect critical infrastructure from sabotage and terrorist attacks. Nearly 3 years since the Nord Stream explosions, an independent and conclusive determination has not been reached. We note that the investigations conducted by Denmark and Sweden established that the incident was an act of deliberate sabotage, though without identifying the perpetrators. More recently, there has been a significant breakthrough as German authorities, in cooperation with other states, have arrested a suspect in connection with the attacks. This marks the first arrest of its kind in this case, and we commend the efforts of the national authorities concerned. Sierra Leone supports the timely completion of the ongoing investigations in Germany and elsewhere. These processes must remain independent, impartial, and transparent. Establishing the full facts through credible and verifiable inquiry will help dispel allegations and provide a firm basis for accountability. We call on all involved parties to exercise restraint and be supportive of the investigations. In line with its mandate under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, the Security Council must see to addressing this matter comprehensively, considering its legal, security, and environmental dimensions. The Council has rightly encouraged and supported national investigations, and we believe it may continue to remain seized of the matter to ensure that international peace and security is safeguarded. As facts emerge, accountability and due process must remain paramount. Any response to such acts should be firmly anchored in established legal procedures, ensuring respect for the rights of suspects and the integrity of judicial processes. Those responsible, once identified, must be held fully accountable through fair and impartial proceedings. The rule of law must prevail at every stage, from investigation to prosecution, so that justice is not only done, but is seen to be done in the circumstances. In closing, Mr. President, Sierra Leone reaffirms its unwavering respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states and underscores the imperative of protecting civilian infrastructure, including energy facilities, from harm. We commend the cooperation demonstrated thus far among the states concerned and encourage continued collaboration and information sharing within the framework of international law. At the same time, the Security Council must remain united and proactive. This council was established to respond to threats to international peace and security, and we must live up to that mandate by ensuring that incidents such as the Nord Stream sabotage are fully investigated. Transparency, accountability, and adherence to the rule of law are among our strongest tools for addressing grievances and sustaining international peace. And it is essential that we uphold these principles even as we navigate complex geopolitical realities. I thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, we would like to thank Assistant Secretary General Yencha for his briefing. Almost 3 years have passed since the explosions that damaged the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea. This act of deliberate sabotage disrupted energy supplies, heightened tensions, and underscored the vulnerability of critical transnational infrastructure. My delegation condemns the deliberate destruction of civilian infrastructure, which is a clear violation of international law. The targeting of pipelines undermines the principles of international law and endangers the well-being of millions. Such incidents set a dangerous precedent, risk further escalations, and erode trust and cooperation among states. We remain concerned about the security of such assets and the broader implications for stability in Europe. The Security Council must remain vigilant against any threats to global peace and security arising from acts of sabotage against civilian infrastructure. We note the recent development shared by the German authorities regarding their investigation and acknowledge the efforts by Denmark and Sweden in their respective inquiries. In this regard, We welcome the news that an arrest was made based on the warrant issued, which demonstrate clear commitment to pursuing accountability and transparency. We commend these efforts demonstrated by investigating authorities. It's essential that these investigations proceed in accordance with national and international law, and that any individual found responsible are held accountable under the law, regardless of nationality or affiliation. In conclusion, Mr. President, Somalia reaffirms its commitment to the principles of international law, the protection of civilian infrastructure, and the rule of law. We call for the timely conclusion of national investigation. We also urge enhanced regional and international cooperations and information sharing among all relevant parties. This is essential to prevent any escalations of tensions and to uphold the principles on which our multilateral system is built. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
ASG Incha, thank you very much for your briefing. Mr. President, the protection of critical undersea infrastructure is essential as our reliance on it continues to grow. For many people, underwater pipelines and electricity connectors represent a vital lifeline. Moreover, submarine cables form a backbone of the global economy as the main communication line, carrying 99% of the world's data traffic. With this in mind, Slovenia reaffirms its condemnation of the act of sabotage directed against the Nord Stream pipelines almost 3 years ago. We are particularly concerned about the severe environmental impact of the incident, which is believed to have caused the single largest discharge of methane ever recorded. It is, of course, crucial for this infrastructure to be protected against deliberate and accidental damage. Such incidents have been numerous, especially in the Baltic Sea, where multiple power and data cables have been damaged in recent years. Slovenia is ready to support action in the framework of the UN related to the security of underwater infrastructure. We are ready to support any meaningful initiatives that uphold the rule of law, ensure accountability, foster transparency, and support ongoing investigations. Mr. President, Slovenia notes that the 2 national investigations into the act of sabotage on the Nord Stream pipelines have concluded in line with the fundamental principles of the rule of law. We further note that the investigative efforts of German authorities are progressing, as we saw the reports that an arrest was made in relation to the case only recently. We recognize that arrests do not equate to the convictions and that the investigation is ongoing. Slovenia commends German authorities for their commitment to conducting a comprehensive and impartial investigation of the incident, and we fully support their efforts. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Mr. President, I also thank ASG Yencha for the informative briefing. We are in an era of unprecedented armed conflict, where both state and non-state actors are employing a range of traditional and new tools to achieve their war aims. Among the tools of war we are witnessing being employed is the targeting of critical energy infrastructure, including oil and gas pipelines and electricity grids. Nearly 3 years have elapsed since the attacks on the Nord Stream pipelines. There has long been a consensus that this incident was an act of sabotage that demands full accountability. Guyana condemns all deliberate attacks against critical civilian and energy infrastructure. The targeting and destruction of such infrastructure impacts not only the countries in which they are situated, but can have vast, far-reaching economic and environmental consequences. We acknowledge the national investigations launched by Denmark, Sweden, and Germany to establish the facts of the incident and possibly find those responsible for its planning and execution. We also note that the investigation launched by Germany is still ongoing, and have taken note of the announcement on 21st August by the Office of the Federal Prosecutor of Germany that a Ukrainian national has been arrested in connection with the Nord Stream attacks. We are hopeful that this development will accelerate the path towards accountability. We look forward to receiving further updates as this investigation advances. Guyana further reiterates its support for a thorough and conclusive investigation and calls on the international community to extend any appropriate support that could bring the ongoing investigation to a swift end. We emphasize that intentional destruction of critical civilian infrastructure should consistently be met with clear condemnation and consequences for those responsible. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, President. I would also like to thank ASG Encha for his briefing. President, we return to this chamber once again to discuss the Nord Stream incident. While the matter remains under active national criminal investigation, the Republic of Korea would like to reiterate its principled position on this issue. First, my delegation continues to be resolutely opposed to all attacks or any form of sabotage anywhere targeting critical infrastructure that may result in the disruption of vital energy supply chains for civilians. It is important to ensure that perpetrators are held responsible for such indiscriminate acts with a view to preventing the occurrence of similar actions moving forward. Second, the Republic of Korea also reaffirms its strong trust in the ongoing national criminal investigation led by the German Federal Prosecution Authority into the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. This investigation is being conducted with utmost seriousness, independence, and impartiality in full compliance with the rule of law and the principle of separation of powers. Recent developments, including the arrest of suspect in Italy, clearly demonstrates significant and substantive progress in uncovering the facts. In light of this, we emphasize the need to respect and patiently await the conclusions of the German investigation. As such, the Security Council must refrain from any actions or rhetoric that could politicize or undermine the ongoing investigation. It is crucial that the Council not become a forum for interference or premature judgments that could compromise the confidentiality and integrity of judicial processes. Indeed, the steady advancement of the investigation affirms that there is no need for direct Security Council intervention at this time. The Republic of Korea, therefore, calls upon all stakeholders to uphold the principles of transparency, respect for due process and non-politicization, and to continue cooperative engagement with the relevant investigative authorities. President, 3.5 years of war in Ukraine have clearly shown how essential the protection of critical infrastructure is to international peace and stability. In this regard, we trust that through the diligent and independent work of national authorities, the truth will emerge and accountability will be achieved. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Republic of Korea for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
I thank Assistant Secretary-General Yencha for his briefing. The United Kingdom remains deeply concerned about the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines and continues to support efforts to uncover the truth about what happened. We note recent developments in the German prosecutor's investigation, including reports of an arrest in Italy linked to the incident. These developments reinforce the importance of allowing national authorities to continue to carry out their work independently and thoroughly, in line with the rule of law and international standards. It is essential that the Council respects the integrity of these investigations. Attempts to politicise the process or draw premature conclusions risk undermining the credibility of the legal proceedings. We welcome the continued engagement of Germany, Sweden, and Denmark, and commend their commitment to transparency and impartiality. The Council should focus on supporting these efforts rather than diverting attention from them. We also find it necessary to highlight the contradiction in Russia's approach. while Russia calls for accountability over some attacks on infrastructure, it continues to intensify its deliberate targeting of critical and energy infrastructure in Ukraine. In 2025, Russia has fired an average of 4,000 drones at Ukrainian cities each month, over 4 times the monthly average in 2024. These strikes have caused widespread blackouts and severe damage to civilian infrastructure. If Russia is genuinely concerned about the protection of such infrastructure, it should demonstrate that by ending its unlawful aggression against Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the UK for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of France. Thank you, President. I would like to thank Mr. Yencha for his briefing. Russia is once again asking for a meeting on Nord Stream when nothing justifies it. These meetings only illustrate Russia's willingness to divert attention and the resources of this council, as well as that of the international community. Our assessment of the explosions that damaged the oil pipelines Nord Stream 1 and 2 in September 2022 has not changed. These events are serious and they have been taken seriously by the relevant authorities. Inquiries and investigations have been carried out by Germany, Denmark and Sweden. We have never had any reason to doubt the seriousness of these procedures. And we recall it, as we did last October. The German, Swedish and Danish judicial authorities are independent. Their investigations are in line with fundamental principles of the rule of law. We can't say that they are lacking transparency. Sweden, Denmark and Germany have kept the Council informed through various letters since 2022. After carrying out in-depth, complex inquiries, including a comprehensive review of the explosion site, the Swedish and Danish prosecutors closed their respective inquiries in February last year. German justice, in which we have full confidence, is continuing its investigation. We have taken note of the announcements of the arrest of an individual in the context of this inquiry. It is important that the judicial procedure be led to the end without any kind of political interference. By making the Council meet on this issue many times, Russia is trying to put pressure on the German investigators, and this is unacceptable. In conclusion, I would also highlight the contradiction between Russia's concern about the attack on European critical infrastructure and its continuation of systematic deliberate attacks on Ukrainian civilian infrastructure. France once again condemns the Russian strikes that affected, in particular, the west of Ukraine in the night between the 20th and the 21st of August. In spite of the international community's efforts to reach a fair, lasting peace when Ukraine is ready to negotiate, Russia is once again trying to divert our attention. Its only goal is to continue its aggression and hope that we will become wary of the situation. Thank you.
I
thank the representative of France for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank ASG Miroslav Yencha for his briefing. The deliberate sabotage in September 2022 of Nord Stream offshore natural gas pipelines in international waters was an alarming and reprehensible act. Pakistan is seriously concerned on premeditated and deliberate attacks against critical energy and civilian infrastructure of other states, including those carried out by terrorist entities. Mr. President, in an increasingly interconnected and interdependent world, the deliberate targeting of transnational infrastructure, whether energy pipelines, telecommunication cables, or data networks, is an illegal act that constitutes a threat to global stability and hinders the smooth functioning of global markets. An attack on these facilities and critical infrastructure undermines commercial operation of such entities and also creates a dangerous precedent that must be effectively addressed. Towards this end, Mr. President, I would like to make the following points. First, the energy and the safety and security of critical civilian and energy infrastructure, especially that of transnational nature, must not be jeopardized during hostilities. This requires the enforcement of applicable international law and the strengthening of international cooperative frameworks to deal with such attacks. Second, Accountability for all such incidents and deliberate attacks must be ensured by bringing the perpetrators to justice. In this context, we have taken note of the progress made by the relevant German authorities, including the arrest of one suspect. We also note that Germany's national investigations are still ongoing. Third, we recognize the complexities and legal intricacies involved in the criminal investigations on this incident. We hope that the inquiries and investigations, once concluded to the satisfaction of all parties concerned, would help establish facts, address legitimate concerns of all those affected by it, and reinforce the crucial norm that such attacks will be met with proper scrutiny and accountability in a transparent, objective, and legally sound manner. Needless to add, cooperation between concerned parties is essential for credible investigation and follow-up. In conclusion, Mr. President, my delegation once again reiterates its call for identifying and holding those responsible for this attack to account in order to prevent such attacks in the future. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to thank ASG Yensa for his briefing. Greece firmly condemns all attacks against civilian and energy infrastructure, including the act of sabotage against the Nord Stream pipelines that took place almost 3 years ago. These attacks not only jeopardize energy security in Europe, but also cause serious environmental harm. Accountability is essential. In view of the above, I would like to make 3 brief points. First, we note that the investigation process into the Nord Stream attacks is still ongoing in Germany and stress the need for the conclusion of the process under complete confidentiality and without external interference. We welcome the latest communication by Denmark, Germany, and Sweden on recent developments, and we express our full support to Germany's continuing efforts to conduct the necessary investigations on this important matter in line with national and international law. We also thank Denmark and Sweden for having concluded their respective investigations. Second, as we have repeatedly stated in this chamber, the Security Council is not the appropriate forum for discussing domestic legal or judicial processes of a sovereign state. These are ongoing, confidential criminal investigations, and the independence of the judiciary in Germany, as in any other country, cannot and should not be undermined or subjected to political pressure. Third, when discussing energy infrastructure, it is important to stress that the massive attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure and civilian targets must cease immediately, and that Russia must fully comply with international humanitarian law. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. I now give the floor to China.
President, I thank ASG Yencha for his briefing. The explosions of the Nord Stream pipelines constitute a serious incident of sabotage against transnational energy infrastructure. As a result, global energy supplies, the marine environment, and the safety and security of maritime navigation have all suffered its negative consequences. Since the explosions happened, the Council has deliberated on this matter several times. Many Council members, including China, have repeatedly called for objective, impartial, and professional investigations to promptly establish facts and bring perpetrators to justice in order to prevent similar incidents from happening again. Council members have engaged in discussions on whether to have international or national investigations. Back then, some in the Council argued strongly in favor of giving Sweden, Denmark, and Germany time to conduct their respective national investigations. However, 3 years have elapsed, and here we are still waiting, yet to see definitive conclusions and the complete truth surrounding the explosions. Sweden and Denmark have already announced the termination of their national investigations without sharing any substantive information. While the German investigations are still ongoing, only very limited information has been made public officially. For a long time, the public could only rely on media expose to obtain information and speculate on what had happened. This is anything but normal. China has taken note of reports about the recent arrest of a suspect, as well as the joint letter thereon addressed to the Council from Germany, Sweden, and Denmark. This, however, does not suffice as a response to the doubts and concerns of the international community. We expect Germany to expedite its investigations and judicial proceedings and timely publish the progress and results via official channels. We hope relevant countries can communicate and cooperate with the main parties to the incident of Nord Stream pipeline explosions. We hope the Council will remain seized of the matter. To conclude, I wish to reiterate that truth should not be swept under the rug. Investigations should not be politicized. Similar incidents should not be allowed to recur, and perpetrators should not walk free, unpunished by law. On the explosions incident of the Nord Stream pipelines, the international community rightfully demands a truthful answer. Thank you.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I also extend my appreciation to ASG Genscher for his briefing. Allow me to focus on a number of points. We have full confidence in the ability of German authorities to conduct their investigation. It is important that we let this investigation run its course. We see no reason to question the impartiality, thoroughness, or scope of the German investigation. Recent developments only lend further weight to its credibility. Time and time again, we have heard the Russian Federation state that this investigation is going nowhere, which is clearly not the case. If we are genuinely committed to uncovering the truth, the right course of action is therefore to support the ongoing process, as Denmark has been by cooperating with German authorities as we would in any other investigation, sharing relevant information in line with the principles of mutual international legal assistance. Let me recall that the explosions on pipelines connecting Russia and Germany took place in international waters. However, as one of the explosions took place within the Danish EEZ, our independent authorities conducted an investigation into the incident. During the investigations, the Danish authorities collaborated closely with international partners. Based on their findings, they concluded that the pipelines had been deliberately sabotaged, while at the same time assessing that there was not sufficient grounds to pursue a criminal case in Denmark. This reflects the standard and proper way for such cases to be handled among partners, and the investigation was conducted in line with fundamental rule of law principles. Mr. President, Denmark has fully cooperated with this Council. From September 2022 until today, Denmark, alongside Germany and Sweden, has kept the Council consistently informed about the investigation process through 7 joint letters. In addition to keeping this Council informed, we have also provided updates to the Russian authorities bilaterally through numerous diplomatic notes outlining the incident and the investigation's progress. To assert otherwise is not only inaccurate, but an unacceptable misrepresentation of the facts. Denmark further notes that one Council member today have called for an international investigation into the Nord Stream sabotage. While we recognize that such investigations may in certain circumstances be a valuable tool, they should only be considered by the Council in exceptional cases. This could be warranted in situations where the national investigations are somehow lacking. However, we don't see any substantiation for this in the case at hand. Quite on the contrary, we seem to be meeting today exactly because we have progress in an ongoing national criminal investigation. Mr. President, it would not be appropriate nor helpful for the Council to prejudice outcome of Germany's ongoing national investigation, which remains robust, independent, and yet to be concluded. Frankly, we are puzzled as to why we are today spending the Council's valuable time and resources discussing the issue of a national criminal investigation prior to its conclusion. Since the Nord Stream explosions occurred in international waters, any state, including the Russian Federation, is entitled to conduct its own investigation in full compliance with international law. Denmark never rejected the Russian Federation these rights. On the contrary, Denmark has provided updates to the Russian authorities throughout the process. No one is placing obstacles to a Russian investigation. Indeed, the operators of the pipelines, the two Nord Stream companies, of which Russia is a major shareholder, have already conducted such investigations. Finally, Mr. President, to conclude, it is difficult not to address Russia's glaring hypocrisy in calling this briefing. The Council has held numerous meetings on Nord Stream, despite the fact that serious investigations are clearly still ongoing. Moreover, Russia repeatedly demands the Council's attention on the incidents relating to the Nord Stream pipelines, while at the same time systematically attacking and decimating Ukraine's critical infrastructure militarily. Russia's actions in Ukraine, in clear violation of international humanitarian law, continue to have a devastating impact on millions of Ukrainians every day. And it, frankly, makes the great concern expressed by Russia on infrastructure today sound rather hollow. Russia's illegal, full-scale invasion of Ukraine is, in fact, the real issue of urgency for this Council. This is the real threat to international peace and stability. I thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Panama. Distinguished members of the Council, we would like to thank ASG Yencha for his detailed briefing and for the information provided pertaining to the incidents that occurred on the Nord Stream gas pipeline in September 2022 and the consequences resulting from that. Panama, a country that is traditionally devoted to maritime affairs, recognizes the importance of global interconnectivity and its impact on social development and the broad economy. That is why we are concerned about the new risks and threats to any critical infrastructure, either in the maritime domain or elsewhere, that undermines global economic stability. We'd like to stress the importance of these invisible arteries that connect millions of people in different continents, which allow for the constant flow of energy services and provide information that guarantees the stability of financial systems and trade systems throughout the world. We also want to stress that the security of transnational infrastructure goes beyond simply energy facilities. It also includes communication networks as well. Just through the territory of Panama alone, 8 of these submarine cables converge. That's why we think that the protection of this infrastructure should be understood to be a collective priority. International cooperation is of paramount importance to breed mutual trust and to develop effective mechanisms for prevention, mitigation, and response should any incidents occur. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline represents one of the greatest climate disasters caused by mankind. It exacerbates the global climate crisis, and it has led to significant environmental damage in the Baltic Sea as it reactivated toxic sediments and also undermined the survival of vulnerable marine species. As a result of all of the above, we support the investigations that are ongoing, carried out by the relevant authorities, that aim to shed light on what happened in the incident with the pipeline. These investigations must be carried out impartially and must lead to convincing results. We reiterate that international law and accountability are critical for justice and peaceful coexistence between nations, and they must prevail in this and any other similar case that undermines international security. Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. The circumstances that have deteriorated regional stability and seriously affected dialogue and trust in Europe have rekindled internal divisions about Europe's energy policy. It is clear that restoring political processes and diplomatic processes to build up mutual trust and security, as well as to guarantee transparent mechanisms that avoid acts such as the destruction of the pipeline happening again, that all of this requires time and shared determination. Nevertheless, we would like to underscore the importance of there being clear responsibilities shouldered with regard to these acts that compromise energy and environmental security, and that is why we must see the due investigations and legal procedures, and they must be fair and transparent. And there must also be patience to rebuild a delicate balance that must lead to a peaceful future, and it is critical that this be based on common understanding to move clearly towards peace. Thank you. I now resume my function as President of the Council. The delegation of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor once again to make another statement. You have the floor.
Thank you, President. As I spoke first, if I may, I'd like to briefly comment on some of the remarks we heard in the chamber today. First and foremost, in response to my Danish colleague, I'd like to illustrate your words regarding the fact that Denmark has substantively cooperated with the Russian Federation on investigations. I'd like to back these up with concrete facts. Under the FSB sent at least 5 mutual legal assistance requests to Denmark, and we were told each time that the provision of such information would pose a threat to the Danish state. The only substance you referred to was the substance in a 27th June 2023 letter. That letter referred to the fact that Denmark has lifted a cylindrical object from out of the Baltic Sea. We requested to look at that object. Our request was ignored. That is all the substance we have. Now, if that's what you refer to when you say substantive assistance, it comes no surprise then that your investigation concluded what it did, and in fact you mentioned this terrorist act, the destruction of undersea infrastructure, international infrastructure. It would appear that it's you call it a loss of time for the Security Council discussing this. We have completely different standards we stick to. We're not discussing Lego, we're discussing concrete issues. In fact, I asked for the floor to a greater extent to point out a very worrisome trend which was blatantly obvious in the interventions of a number of our Western colleagues today. They effectively showed their true colors today. It comes as no surprise to us, the fact that they, as part of their bloc discipline, tried to exculpate the German authorities, and not very skillfully. What we were surprised to see is that some Western representatives today, whether knowingly or unknowingly, called the Nord Stream pipeline terrorist attack. Well, they in fact linked it with the Ukrainian crisis. Although what we're talking about is the destruction of transboundary undersea infrastructure. And this situation is covered by very specific international documents. Colleagues, this is a short-sighted and dangerous line to pursue. Terrorists, well, you're basically dividing terrorists into good guys and bad guys. Now, this two-faced approach is actually undermining international efforts to combat terrorism. After all, the Nord Stream pipeline explosion, as I already said earlier, is covered by very specific international conventions, as part of which you have very specific international obligations that you are bound by. Such double standards only serve to confirm our conviction that our Western colleagues are not interested in a results-oriented investigation into the terrorist act conducted in the Baltic Sea. They reaffirmed the fact that beginning an international investigation as swiftly as possible is the right line to pursue. I thank you.
Agradezco a la delegación.
I thank the delegation of the Russian Federation.
Has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for the floor to respond to the comments made by the representative of the Russian Federation. Denmark is very concerned about attacks against critical infrastructure. We do take sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline seriously, and together with Germany and Sweden, we have kept the Security Council fully informed throughout the investigation process. I elaborated on how we've done that in my statement. After a complex and comprehensive investigation, the Danish authorities finally concluded that the explosion on and damage to the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, which occurred outside of Danish territorial waters on September 26, 2022, were caused by deliberate sabotage. It is the assessment of the Danish authorities, based on the investigation conducted, that there are unfortunately not sufficient grounds to pursue a criminal case in Denmark. Due to the investigation's relation to matters of national security, certain aspects of the inquiry cannot be disclosed. This is perfectly natural and a fully applicable reason in all relevant legal frameworks of mutual legal assistance. Denmark has conducted what investigation we could within the framework of our national criminal justice system, and when that was no longer possible, cooperated with the German authorities, which we have a long tradition of doing. As we said in our statement, we note that there is an ongoing, robust and credible criminal investigation being undertaken in Germany, and we have full confidence that that investigation is being conducted in an impartial and comprehensive manner in line with all relevant rules and procedures. It is important that we let this investigation run its course. Denmark has had close cooperation with relevant foreign authorities, especially concerning the technical aspects of the investigation. The Russian authorities have been continually informed of the progress of our investigation. And let me reiterate that since the explosions occurred outside of territorial waters, any actor may access the site and conduct their own investigation. This message has repeatedly been conveyed to Russia. No one is placing any obstacles on a Russian investigation. The operators of the pipeline, the two Nord Stream companies, which are owned by the Russian state-owned company Gazprom, have already conducted such investigations. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. No hay más intervenciones.
There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting stands adjourned.